Hello, welcome to my channel. I'm Tiffany, retired librarian turned homeschool mom. So this is one of my day shoots. My in-laws have my daughter. My husband has gone to exercise, and yeah, this is being filmed on the 29th of September. So this is, by the time you guys see this, it will be March. Hopefully I will be feeling better. Unfortunately, my mother died recently. Like a couple days ago. So this is an odd thing, but we still need to get things shot. So let's move aside from this, and life goes on. Onto something that's strangely enough relevant when I'm filming. So this is not, see if I can actually get a cover page on this. No, title page, no. All I'm getting is title pages. Okay, so this isn't exactly the best thing, but this book is, and yes, it's ebook. It's a chapter book, so it works. And this is, I was able to get it on Libby, which is the pretty much standard library app. So this is Bread and Roses 2 by Katherine Paterson. Now, what this book has to do with, again, this is, you guys are seeing this in March. I'm filming this literally the very, very end of September, Women's History Month. So what this book has to do with is a mill strike in, where are we? I think this is Pennsylvania. I think this is Pennsylvania. Go back and jump to the historical information here. The historical note, which is, this is historical fiction. So, no, this is Massachusetts. It's Lawrence, Massachusetts. And this is the textile mills. So that's what this is. So this is talking about the strike that they had there. I'll go back to the historical note here. Away from the knowledge. So, and yes, the strike itself is an actual event here. Let's see. So, yeah. On January 12th, this is 1912, which is interesting because our next month stuff has to do with something that happened again in 1912. We're doing the Titanic for April. But this happened on started on January 12th, 1912, in the masonry, in the textile mills of Lawrence, Michigan, or Massachusetts. So this is the historical background of this. And a lot of these, again, this is immigrant workers. So because they could pay them cheaply, they were going over and specifically recruiting immigrants from countries like, I think Scotland was one of them, oddly enough. Italy was a big one. And that's our main character. Our main character, our female main character is in fact Italian. Though I think she was she was born in the United States, I think. Her parents, however, did not speak English. So, but yeah, they did a massive strike, and one of the big things that Kendra, don't climb on me. That happened was the children, they sent, because things were getting a little bit too violent, as time went on, they sent a lot of the Italian immigrant children to a little town in Vermont called Barr. And because they were also an immigrant town, they worked on something else. I can't remember. It wasn't mills. But they had gained union status. at this point. So they took in the children. Um, so, and it was a small town of a lot of Italian immigrants in this little Vermont town, um, where they did, looks like glass. No, granite. It was granite quarries. And this is when they brought in, they also brought in a lot of the Scottish. And then they had Spanish and English and Greek and French, Canadian workers and the Italian sculptors. So, and that's what they brought in. But this is kind of, again, this is historical fiction. Again, it's called Bread and Roses 2. So you start off, you have two characters in this book. One's a boy, one's a girl. The boy is who you meet first. I believe his name is Jake. He is relatively young. He works in the mills, but his dad's a drunkard and father keeps stealing his money, and he's kind of living on the streets periodically. And he meets another little girl who's searching for her shoes because she'd hid them because she wanted new shoes, and her sister needed them more because her sister was working in the mills, and her father had died. I don't know whether he died in the mills or what. So her mother and her sister and her older sister work in the mills, and then she has a baby brother. So, and let's see if I can find her name here. But the boy by the name of, I believe his name is Jake. They meet when he's hiding kind of in the alleys. And then he meets up with the Italians, and they encourage him to strike. But he's starving. He doesn't have community because he's an American. So he's not an immigrant at all. Sorry, even though it's 11:30 in the afternoon. My daughter keeps me up and stuff's going on, unfortunately. But nonetheless, she allows him to sleep in their kitchen. And yes, this is kind of how they make. So yeah, Jake is his name, and it shortly goes on about how he gets in with the Italians and they feed him and they encourage him to strike because they're getting their pay. They're getting their pay cut. That's what's causing them to strike. They're starving. So it's like they're working all these hours, and this, I believe they're working more than 40 hours. And essentially they're getting their pay almost cut in half. So it's like we're working all this. You recruited us out from the other countries, and we're still starving to death. And our children are starving. This is why they're striking. They're striking because they're starving to death. And they're freezing. I mean, this is Massachusetts. They want to afford coal to put in their stoves to feed their children, to clothe their children. So, but it starts off with this Jake and talking about the Italians and how they start off the strike, which is kind of interesting. And then Rosa is the name of our other female protagonist. She goes to school. It starts off with her in school. Now, her teacher, Mrs. Finch, is against the strikers. She's a well-educated American woman who doesn't really understand what's going on. She doesn't somehow, and though this isn't mentioned, knowing this time period and knowing some of my research into education, it's very likely that she was taught at one of the normal schools, which is strictly female teaching schools. A lot of these are single, well-off young women, and usually very religious. In her case, she's Protestant. Now, remember, Rose is Italian, so she's Catholic. And a lot of, obviously, the Italians are Catholic. The Irish, if they're there, again, Catholic. But so they technically think her teacher, in her brain, the teacher is going to hell because she's Protestant, because they're Catholic. And that's what they're told in church. But again, this is the time period. But Rose is very good. She has one history text. Most of the kids can't afford textbooks because you would have to buy them. And these people are struggling to feed their children, clothe their children, heat their tiny tenement apartments. So buying textbooks is not exactly on the top of their list. And their teacher doesn't seem to quite understand it. So they're talking about U.S. history. So, and then she reads out, it's like how many kids like in the class. You have a Marco and a Bridget. You have Tony, Pierre, Luigi, and Marta. So you have a mixture of Italian, French, Canadian, and Irish immigrant children. Again, they're poor and they're starving. So she tells them, she urges them, it's like, tell your parents not to strike. It's like, yeah, we're starving to death. So, but she comes home and her father's dead. She has to tell, it's like, where's your father? Why is your mother working? It's like, because my father is dead and we're starving. It's very obvious that her teacher is out of touch with the community that she is teaching in, which again is not really surprising. Unfortunately, a lot of the teachers who were taught in these normal schools, again, were well educated, normally upper middle class white Protestants, and were just kind of out of touch. And a lot of the time, in this case, they probably were paid by the mill to teach the children to read and write and do the basics. And Rosa's in the 6th grade. So, but her, she goes home and it's like her mother and her sister are striking. And she tries to tell them, she's listening to her teacher. It's like she's trying to tell them not to strike. She's like, her mother's like, no. I may not speak very good English, but I understand that I want you to go to school. You need new shoes. We're starving. I can't feed you, your brother. Your sister has to work. Yeah, this isn't good. Like, I cannot support. We're starving. We cannot support our family. But eventually it gets too violent. And the union says, look, we'll take some of the children and we'll put them on a train. Originally, she's supposed to go to New York, and then her mother changes her mind to go to Vermont. Now what happens with Jake and how he comes back into the picture is she ends up talking to him. He finds out at first she's going to New York, and it's like, help me like forge this. My father is dead. He drugged himself to death and froze to death. And then that's Jasper in the background. By the way, the door is open because nobody's home. But he's our youngest. My calico's in my lap. He's our Balinese mix, my big baby foofball. But back to the story. So he thinks, okay, I can get to New York and I can find a better life there. I can find better work there. And last minute, so he sneaks upon the train. She tries to get him off because her mother changed last minute to send her to Vermont. So they fudge it and make her call him Salvador and make him his brother. And then they eventually he does end up telling the family the truth. When Rosa goes to school, he ends up going to work, I think, in the Granite, which is actually it's better conditions. He gets better pay. He's treated well. There's camaraderie there. There are people looking out for him. Again, I believe he's older than Rosa. So that eventually finds out. And then at one point in time, because jump further into this book here. Go back. Back to the title page. A woman is killed, Annie Lapizzo, which does actually happen. Again, this is historical fact, and they blame it on the strikers and the strike leaders, and they're eventually taken to trial. I think the historical note says their trial goes on to like November, and then they're let out because there's no proof that. And then at one point in time, her mother is going to send her sister and her baby brother to Philadelphia. And when they're trying to get on the train, the people who work for the mill and the militia, because the mayor of the town isn't particularly happy, basically attacks them. They're attacking a bunch of women and children. So this gets them really, really bad press. Yeah, it's even you can still get very, very bad press. And this is a turning point in the strike, because essentially the rest of the country is now turning against the mill workers because his men attacked and injured women and children, particularly young children. Her little brother is taken away briefly. They get him back. Her sister and her mother are injured because they're on the platforms and they're attacked. And eventually, the husband and wife figure out, well, the husband's not the wife of the family, take Rosa and Jake in. He finds out, he knows, he's like, you're not Italian. What the heck is going on? And Jake explains, it's like, he was running, he found his father dead, he had bought his father's whiskey, he thought he was going to be on the hook for murder. And the guy's like, your father drunk himself to death and froze. This is not your fault. This has nothing to do with you. It's like, but I bought the whiskey. It's like, yeah, doesn't matter. Your father did not kill himself. Or you did not kill him. You were not on the hook for murder. That's the reason he's running away. It's like, and essentially they adopt him. So he's going to stay there and Rosa goes home. And so that's how the story ends. So, and then Rosa goes home to her family, and that's where the book ends. So, and they do a historical note, which I'll jump to real quick. So the conditions of the mill were difficult. They had the lowest paying jobs because they were the immigrants. Pretty much everybody who was able-bodied had to go to work. And then in 1911, the Massachusetts state legislature ordered mill owners to cut working hours of women and children from 56 a week to 54 a week. So again, they're working 56, women and children and men were working 56 hours a week to 54. That's not much. Beginning on January 1st, 1912. So most of the men made higher wages than the women, but the mill owners decided to cut everyone's hours to 54 to speed up the machines. So basically they're making things more dangerous. These are giant looms. I mean, lots of moving parts and fingers can go places and you can break bones with these things. So they decided to speed up the looms and cut the pay to make up for the lost profits. So, and then you had the Italian branch of the Industrial Workers of the World, which is led by Angelo Rocco, this is a 25-year-old worker who went to high school at night, determined to strike if the pay was cut. So this is kind of what actually happened. And then they brought in a man by the name of Joseph Ettor. I may be mispronouncing his name. It's spelled Ettor. He was one of the professional organizers of this. And he was Italian-American, but he spoke a bunch of other languages. So he was able to rile the troops, so to speak. So there were a bunch of different nationalities here. And yeah, and Ettore and his compatriot, the Italian poet Antonio Giovanni, probably mispronounced this, were imprisoned on false charges by Big Bill Hayward and Elizabeth Garley Flynn. So, and they thought this would end the strikes, and it didn't. And let's see what else the trial dragged for them into, and then of course there was in September of 28th, 1912, Ettore Giovanni and a local worker, Joseph Crizzo, were put on trial for murder of Annie Lapuzzo. They were eventually set free. And let's see. It talks about the people in Vermont and unit halls across the country also to take the children. So it talks a little bit about the mills there. Yeah, the early Italians were very active politically, and many of them having socialists or anarchists in Italy. There's a lot of interesting information here because, again, why this is historical fiction, the event it's talking about is real. So, This is a real thing. And where she gets the title is, eventually there was a picture taken of a sign that said, give us bread, give us roses too. Or basically it's kind of debated. It's like, we want bread and roses too, or give us bread, give us roses, or we want bread and we want roses too. And apparently the actual photograph never surfaced. It was something that was reported. So they're not quite sure where it came from, but she incorporates it into her story. This is something that Rosa writes for her mother and her sister on a protest sign. So the author decided to bring that in there as the legendary slogan of this strike, which does eventually end, obviously. And the workers do get more pay. So I think safer working conditions. So it's an interesting book. Again, we're talking women's history. So the reason I mentioned at the beginning of this video that it's kind of, at the time when I'm filming this, it's kind of important is because we're having a lot of workers' strikes right now. If you're unfamiliar, this is the point in time, again, when I'm filming here. The writer's strike just ended. The actor's strike should end soon. Trying to think, there's somebody else outside of Hollywood. They're going to be striking. I think that's the auto workers are striking right now up in, I believe it's Michigan and Detroit. They're striking right now. There's been threats, I know, of American Airlines stewardesses going on strike. So we're very much, it seems like, in a time, particularly with President Biden, who seems to be very, very pro-union, that we're almost in a reawakening of getting our unions back and strong. And unions are important, particularly in certain trades. So it helps. We got our 40-hour work week. We got health care from these unions that are fighting for rights. And the unions are extremely important when they work well, when they're really working for the people and they're not too strong. Because of course we have the police union, which is a whole different thing. And we need some laws to kind of curb the police and, stop giving them military-style weapons. If they need military-style weapons for something, call in the actual military, who know what the heck they're doing and half the time are a heck of a lot more controlled than the police, who are very often extremely uneducated and often very, very nuts. So we do need to change some things around with our police force, where they need to be better educated, they need to be better trained. There needs to be some more education there and some more organization stuff. But again, back to the labor movement. So this is when this book takes place, is the early this is around the time Titanic sank. Another problem. We'll get to that. In fact, I'm probably going to get to that today. I have a book here that needs to go back for our Titanic stories. But the unions were important. Early on, they got rid of child labor. They helped with pay. They helped with funeral services. A lot of workers have today, the 40-hour work week, sick pay, vacation time, the FMLA, which is family leave issues. So unions and organizations like this helps with this. In this day and age, they also help with safety. And we do have problems with that. Doctors are working way too many bloody hours. They're working the hours these guys are working in this book, or more. I don't want a surgeon being sleep deprived. Thank you. And this is the medical field. They know what sleep deprivation does. You think they wouldn't do it to their own people. And that goes for nurses too, and anybody working in hospitals. Stewardesses, like I said, the American Airlines women were threatening. They're exposed to a lot of radiation. They're exposed to abuse by people, and they're exposed to a lot. So yes, they need better pay. They need better hours. They need better benefits. They're on their feet all the time, and they're in airplanes a lot. Now, if you want to, I'm not saying airplanes bad. I'm saying your average person, the radiation is not a big deal. Stewardess, who is flying constantly, all the time, it's going to get more background radiation because then the same with pilots. They're on the planes. The other thing I've learned recently about pilots is they're alcoholics, because if there's an even mention of them having mental health problems, they can lose their pilot's license. That is the stupidest thing in all the world. So they turn to alcohol. So it's either, or even if they're just taking ADHD medication, so they turn to alcohol. Yeah, that's stupid. That's really stupid. Like, I would rather have my therapist or have my pilot on antidepressant, anti-anxiety drugs and seeing therapy than being drunk. One's safe, one's not. So yeah, there's a lot of parallels of what was going on here in the 1900s. Sounds might be my husband. And what is going on now. So we really do need. So this book specifically, the reason I would recommend it is it resonates with what's going on right now. From, as it said, even women, and no, women are still not getting paid. We're still not getting equal pay. Women are still we're still being penalized for our gender, specifically for the off chance that we take maternity leave. So that is a lot of the reason, the off chance that we get pregnant and take maternity leave, or because women are, to this day, the caretakers of the family. So if you have children, they're going to expect mom to take more time off for sick kids than dad. So yeah, there's the massive imbalance there, which is, strangely enough, this day and age is not always true for families. Why, yes, women have to take more time off because we give birth. Men want to actually take, at least the good ones, my husband being one of them, to take time off to help their wives and bond with their children. And sometimes dad wants to be there for doctor's appointments. Dad's going to be the one who's going to be picking up the kids if they're sick and staying home when they're sick, because we have more involved fathers these days. And strangely enough, some of them want to do this, or they want to be the ones. Mom has maybe a more high profile job than dad, so dad's doing all the caretaking stuff. Or you have stay-at-home dads. They're a thing. Or you have LGBT couples where one parent is doing this and one parent is doing that, and it's become very complicated. So, but again, you see the parallels in them fighting for women's rights and people fighting for right. And some of them, again, have not changed, including the ability to feed your children. So, and the other thing that's going on, and this happened, we're getting kind of close to a New Deal thing. Biden's trying to put in place basically an infrastructure core where we need to start giving people jobs to fix our infrastructure because it is falling apart. And the New Deal put people to work building dams, creating our national park system, stuff like that, working in the forestry, and building roads. Now we need them to fix them, the roads, and the bridges, and the dams. We went from building them to, we need to update them before they fall apart and kill people. So, but highly recommend this book. Again, this is, and the historical evidence. If you're looking at strikes, this is specifically as opposed to a lot of the sewing strikes. This is a mill. in Massachusetts. So Bread and Roses 2 by Katherine Paterson. So that's kind of the title a little bit. You can see a little bit of that small cover there. Again, I got this online. Fantastic if you're doing a lesson on immigrant history. So technically this book would fit in I think my June, yes, my June thing, because these people would have come in through Ellis Island. But immigrant history, labor unions, and strikes, particularly both now, and in this case, this is 1912. Its connection to the Titanic is, they didn't have a lot of protections there either, lack of lifeboats. So we will get to that next month. So if you like what you see, be sure to like and subscribe. Again, I'm doing Women's History Month here in March. I've done Irish History Month in the past. You can check out playlists for that. I did Black History Month last month. I have a lot. You can check out my Black History Month. I cover Black History Month all the time. I'm doing the Titanic next month. I'm doing Asian immigration in May, European immigration in June. I'm covering food in July. I'm doing women's inventors in August. I'm doing a deep dive into Beauty and the Beast in September. I'm covering space in October because partially it's scary, partially I ran out of spooky stuff. So we're doing space. I'm covering the Hindu festival of Diwali in November. I have done Native American stuff in the past, but again, there's limited stuff I can do. There's limited books I can cover. And then I'm doing mysteries in December of 2024, which is kind of important. Something my late mother's birthday. She would have turned, I think, 56 or 65, 64, 65 on December 1st, and she loved mysteries. So I was planning on doing that before my mother passed. But because I like mysteries too, and I love my mother, still do, miss her, but we're still in again, my mother died. My mother died on November 27th of 2023. So, and I grew up with her reading mysteries. So, I will be covering a bunch of mysteries in December, and I probably going to continue doing that. Mysteries will be covered pretty much every December. And I'm also covering a bunch of book series. Right now, I think you guys should be dealing with Anne of Green Gables, and then I'm going to be going on straight to enough mystery to the Boxcar Children, and then I'm covering Wings of Fire. So, which is the end of the year. And my mother liked fantasy as well. My mother was a big reader, as am I. So, again, if you like what you see, be sure to like and subscribe. The other exciting thing I will note is coming August-ish, we will finally start our real full-on homeschooling journey. So I will be starting to review the actual stuff that we are back doing when it comes to curriculum stuff. Yeah, my daughter's going to be starting kindergarten, so it will probably be light, but I will start doing videos on Wednesday for those and kind of talking about a little bit more of our homeschooling journey, so that those will be Wednesday reviews. And then check out my travel videos as well. I should have one up for San Antonio by the time you see this, and hopefully we're going to go to a national park sometime around the time you see this. We'll see. So again, like and subscribe. Leave a positive comment if you have one. Thank you.